Welcome back to part two. We're sitting here, and I wanted to just go over. We had a small problem at the end of the last video. Natron is acting a wee bit weird, but we're going to fix it. I have the solution to it, or at least I found a workaround. It should work if you ever run into this problem. And so, with no further ado, or nothing further to ado, let's get into Natron. All right. So when we left off, we had a problem. The problem was that we have a black alpha channel here. Despite us not, we should not have a black alpha channel at this point. We should be getting, if we go over here to this Erode Smooth, it is putting out this for an alpha channel. But for some reason, this multiply node is not registering it. It's just totally saying it doesn't exist. So, what I did, I don't know if it's pulling the. Oh, you know what? I bet I know what it might be. It could be. Let's just try one little thing here. See the constant. Let's try putting that constant value, the alpha, up to 1. Let's see if that constant. Nope, that didn't fix it. So we'll wait. Oh no, that did fix it. Because I disabled it. All right, there was what the problem is. I figured it out. I missed a step. All right, but I had a. If you run into this problem, you know it's always little things you miss. These are complicated setups. This is why I have it documented right next to me. Trying to remember everything is quite hard. Anyway, so what I did. All right, so obviously we need an alpha channel on that to make it work. But let's say we didn't have that. Let's pretend this broke, and we didn't catch that problem. There is another way of getting this exact same result, which is because the alpha comes out of there correctly. What we can do is take it and pipe the mask of this node into there as well, and it produces the correct thing. And then when we go to the next node, we wind up. Oh no, we don't. Oh, never mind. That doesn't work. We're going to break our mask off. Oh, that didn't work. We got to break this back. Let's put it there. All right, this does work. Well, now that we know what the problem was, just set the alpha, the constant alpha, for 3 to 1. Wait a minute. Now it's. Oh, yeah. All right. Did we not just? I just set this and we just saw that it was working a minute ago. Oh, I know. We didn't set that to output the alpha. Sorry, that's what it was. Obviously, it's normally set to an alpha of 0. Oh, I just screwed it up. All right. So it's normally set to an alpha of 0. I didn't not disabled alpha. We needed to do originally was set it to alpha of 1. Let's keep that there. We want to keep the alpha enabled. The reason it looked wonky was because when I removed the alpha, it only had the Erode Smooth to work with, and it shifted everything. That's why it broke there. If this weren't checked and this were set to 0, by taking this mask in and putting it in there, we wind up with the correct thing, and it should be properly positioned. And if we go, nope, I lied again. Never mind. All right, we're just going to, at this point, just move on. Sorry, I'm trying to show another workaround. Apparently, there's only the proper workaround, which is to set this to 1, which was my mistake in the first place, or should have been my mistake in the first place, but it's still doing the wrong thing. Oh, Natron, why are you giving us an incorrect result here? We're getting 2 results. I think that it's just a refresh issue. It was. So if the problem happens, it's a refresh issue, because any of those things should probably have worked. This is the wonkiness that I was talking about that we start winding up with. This. I want to say that this is something I've experienced with text nodes trying to use Pango markup at times. I really, for this type of stuff, it can get weird. Just know that it can get weird, and I think it's the Pango. I just always experienced it with the Pango. Anyway, I don't want to dwell. We go back to our original comp. And when we hit A, now we wind up with our comp wars over it because we have a nice alpha that has, oh yes, we want to look at the alpha over here, which you can see it's shifting around every time we move this. By the way, I just want to point out, just so we make sure we know what's going on here, we have a nice soft edge here with, if we take away that B, the B input, which comes from the outline, we wind up with our original text. When we add it in, we wind up with that. If we were to remove the A input, we wind up with only our outline. When we put it back, oops, not A2, A. When we put it back, we wind up with a solid alpha of both our outline and our text, which is done by the max. And by having that set to only pulling in the alpha, we don't bring any of the color information in because I just wanted it to be black there. If I wanted to do color, I would have brought in the alpha separately and it would have been a little harder. And anyway, for now, that was just the simplest way to get this to work. All right, so back to here. We have it. We can see that it's now saying comp wars. Don't worry about the redraw issues. They're just minor things. But we can see that the stars are not showing through our comp wars, which is the goal. It was the ultimate goal of that, so that we can do this. And now our comp wars can zoom in and out. We can move forward to the next part. We're not at the animation part yet. So next part, let's see. Let's get down. We've merged over the stars. We have our next piece there. Hoi, we're going to, for the moment, just take this merge, and because this is going to disappear, we're going to did I do the wrong one? I did the wrong one. I'm going to put that back. I'm going to make sure I have merge 7, which is this merge. I'm going to bring this down to 0, which removes our comp wars. We're going to fit this. All right, it's time to do our scrolling text. That's the last bit. We could have ended this here, but we're going to make the last bit because this is May the 4th, and by God, we're going to have everything. All right, scrolling text. We're not done in here. All right, so, right. We need to, first thing we need to do is, all right, we have to make something that the text is going to work off of. So first we're going to just add our text node, and we're going to do a text. And we're going to look at our text here. And this text is going to be set to, we're going to turn off transform for it, and we're going to turn off, I think I just, we do want justification. We want it to be set to word wrapping. We want it to be set to center, and we want the vertical alignment to be set to center. All right. But that's as much as we're going to do. Now we need to make something that this is going to scroll up and down on. And the problem we have, if we just merge this over our existing thing, let's pretend we're going to do a merge here and just put this in and go back and look at it over our thing. The way we're going to animate the text is on our text node. We're going to come down here. All right, let's put this back to a property of 1. And down here at the bottom, I'm sure I'm covering it up. Actually, I'm not really fully covering it up. We can see that there's a scroll Y value over here. All right, scroll Y allows us to move the text up and down. But it moves it up and down on the whatever it is composited over. Well, right now we don't have any source, so what it's doing is it's using our default image plane. Well, we don't want to do that. We want to put it on something that is long and narrow and represents the perspective of our background, of what the text is going to be scrolling on. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to put in let's first of all reset this to 0, because I don't want my text to be off the screen. We're going to set this to be, we're going to set for a background, we're going to put a constant in. And for our constant, we're going to put our text node into it, and we're going to look at it. Well, we'll look at it over it. We're going to also, for the time being, put this into, well, no. We're going to build our constant first. All right. We're going to tell the constant that instead of extents being default, we're going to tell it we want it to be a specific size. Now, we know that our video is 1920 by 1080. We don't want it to be 1920 by 1080. We want to do a thinner size. We want this to be thinner. We want it to be thin and really, 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 really tall. So for our width, we're going to set it to 1350. And for our height, we're going to set it to, I think it was like 4080. Don't ask me. It just happened to be what I wound up with. So we wound up, as we can see, when we zoom out, this is what our text is going to be when we put it into perspective. But it's not centered. So I want to offset this. And it turned out that with the values we used, if we offset this by 350 from the left, it puts it pretty darn close to the center of the screen. Now, you're going to say, it's not quite centered. I realized that when I was doing this, I actually modified it with we can offset this again with the, when we're actually doing the perspective node with the card 3D. All right, so this gives us our text. But obviously, it's not 3D. So what we want to do is add, obviously, at the end of this, a card 3D. And as we know, as soon as we add the card 3D makes this work with inside of the card 3D automatically is working with inside of our merge node. Okay. But it's not visible. And what we need to do is we need to set up our perspective so that so that our card 3D is actually inside of our view at the proper things. So I've got the settings here in our card 3D. I offset my X, where is it, the translate, because I was being lazy. I did this negative 0.02, 0.02. Which, as you can see, centers it more or less. And I did it actually because I found that the text still didn't look centered to me even beforehand. There was more to it. For the Z, we want to set our Z. Let me form my things again. Let me just highlight this so that I got it. All right. For the, node. For the Y, we want to set the Y here to minus 0.31, and mind you, with text 3D, it works in units of a whole. Our whole view is 1. Okay, so by moving it in at a percentage or at a 1, it's 1 unit of our whatever our unit space is, which happens to be the current screen, or at least one of the current screen horizontal and vertical units. So we're moving it down 0.3 relative to our actual full height of 1080, approximately a third of it, not quite. And then for the Z, I want to move this to back a little bit. I wanted to move this back to a minus. Its current defaults to -1. We're going to set it to -2.1, which pushes it back in perspective just a little bit. Whoops, I didn't do a minus. I did a positive there. -210. That's fine. Which puts it there. That way, when we rotate this, it's going to come towards us. We can see we can see the dotted line of our thing, and we can see the text on it already. Now we just need to rotate it on, I believe it's the X-axis. We're going to just rotate this to -74. And just so you know, what this is going to do is it's rotating it around our pivot, which I don't know where our pivot is. Why our pivot is not showing up here. I'm not going to worry about it. Our pivot, maybe because we're not on our car. auto merger. No, it's just not showing up. Whatever, doesn't matter. We'll just go back here and look at it here. We're going to just set this, as you can see, as we move in a negative direction. Okay. It's, well, you can actually see. Oh, that's weird. It should be doing a perspective. Oh, this better be giving us a perspective. Uh-oh. I think I shifted a perspective value. I just want to make sure I did something else. Oh, no. I think I forced a perspective here. I think I did it. Let me just double check my original. Pull that up over here. And double check that card 3D. Aha! I did, and I didn't document it. So, for this aperture here, I set this to 2, which I believe adds a bit of perspective to it. Oops, here we go. I think that did. No, I don't know. Anyway, it basically forced the perspective a wee bit more than it was. All right, let's set this back to 1, and oh no, that's just what it worked. It got it up to where I wanted it to go. That's why I used it. All right. Anyway. Oh, and that's not at the right point. This should be minus 74, not 54. There we go. Now it's at the right angle. So now, with that set, what we're going to do is go down here to our scroll Y, and we can see that when we move it up and down, now it moves up and down on that axis on the plane that we set up. But, of course, we need to give this colors and so forth. So let's get this to a nice point where we can actually see it fairly well. And zoom in here so we can look at our text. And we're going to put in for our text. I did not actually copy this text into my document, so I'm just going to grab the text from our other one, which is pretty simple. Okay, it was this. I just am doing it so that we can save some time. Paste it in here. It says episode X, which is what this episode is. Natron, Nation. You'll notice I put in the B, the B's. That's again this Pango markup, which means this is what that does is it bolds it. By clicking on markup, you can see that now it's bold. If we turn off the markup, it will unbold it, and we can see the markup language in it. And we can obviously see the difference right there. All right, and so now we can see our text and how it scrolls up and down. And we can scroll that text just by moving that up and down. Now we just need to color it. Well, this is simple. We can't actually move this card 3D. The card 3D isn't what's animating it, which means we cannot motion blur this text. This is an unfortunate side effect of this particular effect. The only way we could do the motion blur this would be to render this out at a ridiculously long amount of time. And if you remember in the real logo, in the real one, they actually couldn't back in those days motion blur their text like that either. So what they did is they made it move very, very, very slowly. And so we're going to just, because it looks the same, we're going to do the same thing. So when it comes time, we're not going to worry about the motion blur. It should work fine. But we do need to worry about our color. So let's go into our color. I already set up, you can see hotkeys for the color. So I could have clicked this last time, but I click on that to pick out the same color. It's the same color. It says 193. For some reason, it doesn't like 192 when you do it. It really doesn't matter. That's just the way it works. It's fine. It's close enough. It gives us our text in the correct color. But we do want to do the same. We want to add our Erode Smooth node to this. All right. So between the text node and the card 3D, we want to add our Erode Smooth. Go Erode Smooth. To give it that light box kind of effect, we are going to tell it that I believe we're just going to leave it there, and I believe we just set it to size of 1. Is that right? Nope. Smooth size of 1.3 and a exponent of 1. You can tell that I like it. Whoa. Whoa, that's very not what I... Oh, okay, it was just a redraw issue. All right, it looks fine here. All right, let's just, for the sake of it, we're zooming in on this and seeing. It's going to look a little kind of funny over here. If we disable this, you can see it just changes it a little bit. It adds a little bit of softening around it. And what that's doing is it's mimicking that this is coming through some, this is film that's being exposed in a very dark room with light coming through these letters that are being pushed back on some form of mechanical device, slowly. And yeah, they actually may have gotten motion blur. Well, a lot of times they didn't. They did this type of stuff stop motion. So they probably didn't have motion blur at the time. Anyway, I don't know if this was because it's based off the original film. They probably didn't do it. That was a later technique. Anyhow, so now we have our Erode Smooth. Let me make sure we've got a merge node. We've got it in A. We have a problem here, which is once our text gets up to the top. Oh, we need to actually animate it. Okay, we can't actually see this until we push our animation, our text up past the end. Let's just, for the time being, because we're not actually animating it, let's try and get this up to a negative value where it's actually clipping. And you can see we've actually run out of space. We could have made this longer, but it would have made it it would have added more complex. That's actually part of the reason I did on the card 3D add the perspective, was to shrink it down a wee bit more, to give it a wee bit extra perspective. If you make the background too big, your text can actually fail to render because you run out of memory. You don't want to do that. So I'm forcing it. I'm sort of forcing the perspective a wee bit more. There's other ways I could have done it. I don't think this was the fastest, but the best way. But also remember, I was trying to do a lot of these things. I do these very, very quickly to build them. I literally did this in one day before the actual presentation. So this was done yesterday. So anyway, what we need to do now is we need to make something that's going to block this. So what we're going to do is use a ramp node. Now, because what we want to do, I actually don't want that connected there. I want to just add a ramp node, tab, ramp, and we're going to, by default, ramp node works off of whatever the default resolution is. As long as it doesn't have a source, it's going to work off of whatever the source resolution is. It's also going to be infinite in direction. If I actually put a source, if I actually ran my card 3D through this in some way, or connected this up to this little chain, it would pull the resolution from this constant over here, which would be bad. We'd wind up with a really funky looking thing. So we're going to just leave it. We don't want anything in it. It by default works off of alpha. So, but what we do want to do is take this merge node and take its mask and put it into there so that it uses this ramp as the mask for a merge node, and that is going to make it disappear. But it's going to make it disappear. It's making it disappear in the wrong place. It's going to be, what we want to do is we want to adjust. Right now our points are 0. We can see 0 and 0.1. What we're going to do is set the 0 to, yeah, we're not disappearing at the right places. I just want to see that. Let me get the plane ramp. There we go. 0.1, 800, 0.2, or 0.0 is 800. So this one was set to 800 because it defaulted to black. So we're going to set that to 800. And then we're going to set the 0.2 to 500, I believe. 500, which just moves. We can see this is, so in the space from basically this point to that point, it's going to go from visible down here at 0.1, which is white, which means it's visible, to 0, which is alpha. So it's going to fade it out. All right, and so if we go back to our text 3D and we start penning that up and down, we should, and remember we can see it slowly fades out as it gets up to the top there, which is exactly what we want. So I believe at this point our entire graph has been constructed, so it's officially time to animate. And we've been doing this, I don't even know, probably I don't want to say it's a half an hour yet. Oh, please don't be a half an hour. This is really long. Apologize. This wasn't meant to be long. I thought this was going to be a fun little thing. Little did I know, nothing ever goes the way you want. So I'm viewing, going back here to our first one. All right. The first thing we need to do is set up our project to the proper length of this. And for the animation, I believe the frame range, we're going to temporarily, our frame range is not going to be actually this long, but I did the animation this long because it was how long it took to get and my initial, I had played with a whole lot of text. I did the original text. It's how long it took for the original text on my system to follow the same pacing as the original movie. So what I'm going to do is set this to, we're going to set our frame range. So we're going to hit S, pull up our project properties, and we're going to set this to 2160, I believe it is. Yep. 2160, which is a silly long timeline. Really ridiculously long. All right. And then we're going to go here. We're going to select merge one, and we're going to go back to the beginning. We're going to set our frame skip to 24 frames. And I believe I just clicked it one time to get to my first position, which should bring us up to frame 25. For frame 25, this is where I started the animation. Let's make sure this is completely visible. We take this, we set our mix node to 0. We want to set a key on our first node. This is our black text. I'm going to go, I believe, 1 second in, and then I'll set this to 1. And then I'll go 2 seconds. I believe we want this to, from the beginning of this animation to the end of this animation is going to be 5 seconds. It took 1 second to get on, which means we want it to hold for 3 seconds. So 1, 2, 3. And then we want it to fade out. We want to go, back once. We're going to, again, set this to 1, set a key there, and then we're going to move ahead 1 second and set it to 0. All right, so let's just look at that animation from the beginning and play it. And at approximately 4 seconds, it should fade away, I think. All right, that's where I think it was. Let me just double check my things, make sure it faded. Let's go back to our last frame. Mix frame. That is not what I had for my times. So we're going to delete this. Remove key. I should have looked. Back a frame. Why are we not moving? Here we go. Let's remove this frame. What did I have? I had, according to this, said I was at frame 121. Must have been back that's very weird. All right, let's go back to our first one. 24, 49, right? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I was at it. I must have been, I don't know. I must have hit the wrong thing. Anyway, this should be 1, right? 149. And then we go forward 1, right? 121. 145. Yes, 0. All right, I don't know. I must have been, I was looking at the wrong number somewhere. All right, so we get our animation, and that's a fundamental thing. We're going to go into the curves and fix our curves. All right. One of the things about light, we're treating this as light. So one of the things, when you get into darker, light works off of a logarithmic scale, which is the opposite of what our current animation is doing. Current animation is starting off dark and rapidly and eases into being light. We want to do the opposite. So we're going to select these bottom two, and right click those, set the interpolation to hold, or horizontal. Excuse me, not hold, horizontal. Then for these top two, we're just going to set this to the interpolation to linear. That's fine. And that's going to basically make it so that when it's going to, as it gets darker, it's going to stay a little bit longer. It's going to just make it dwell, and it's going to make it appear. See, it just stays that extra frame longer right there. And it makes the overall brightening happen just a wee bit smoother, perceptually smoother. Oh, yes, that brings up a good point. Our ramp. We want to change the ramp type from linear to P-linear because we want this to fade smoothly. And this is affecting another thing as a transition. We want this to be perspective or perceptually linear, no, which is what P-linear is. I also want to make sure we get that. All right, so that takes care of our first. That takes care of that first node's animation. All right, so second node. Let's go over here. If we want to go, I'm just gonna go to, this is our stars. Our stars, we want to start that at frame. I'm just going to skip ahead to frame 216. 216. At frame 216, we want to set this to 0. Because we don't want stars during the opening the first part of the sequence. So we set a key to 0. And then exactly one frame later, we're going to make it 1. So bam, it's on. We have it. All right. And just like that, we have a thing. And I believe the stars just stay on for the rest of the animations. Yes. So we're going to go to the comp wars next. So we go to comp wars. And here at comp wars, we're going to set our mix value. We're first going to set up our animation values for the comp, I think. Let me make sure. Comp wars. Yes, we want to. Oh yes, we on the previous frame, we want this mix to be also 0. So let's make sure we have mix 7. Set it to 0. Set a key on frame 217. We want it to be 1. It's going to be visible. Bam! It's there. Comp wars, because bam! It's in your face. All right. Now we need to set our first key for our animation. And our first animation key for this is going to be on frame 217. We're going to set it to. We're going to set our translation to. Y of 0.02. We don't need to worry about. I think it's minus 0.02. Minus 0.02. And our Z is going to be minus 0.048. Minus 0.0. No, excuse me, 0.48. I think it is. 0.48. So it's in our face. Nope. It wasn't negative. Must have been positive. Yes, that's. I did a finite fine tuning of this to get it sort of in where it starts in the movie. It was 0.2, as opposed to, well, yeah. Oh, I think this gets it closer to where it looked like. Oh, wait a minute. No, it isn't. That's not where it was. I'll take it back. It was. The A was down there. This is the framing that I wound up with. We're going to keep it at we're going to keep the Y at minus 0.1 for this point. I want to keep it there. Oh, that looks better to me. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I like it 0.1. I want this to be very close to taking up the entire screen. All right. Anyway, good enough. You can adjust this. We're going to set our first key here. This is frame 217. We're going to set a key for. We're going to set a key for all dimensions. Then we're going to go to frame 529. Which happens to be, I timed it out, it was like 19 seconds in approximately. So that's about 5. No, after everything, it was 529. I said, boom. we want to set the value. All we're going to do is change this to Z is going to be -30, -30. All right, and that should, as we can see, it makes it really small in the frame when viewed full screen. Let's bring this up to full screen. Control 1. We can see that's how small it's going to be at the end of its life. Okay, so we're going to make this fit, shrink it, and that's when we also want this to be at 529. We want this to be 0 for the mix value. All right, for mix 7. So we're going to 0 that out, but we want it to fade out. I believe it was under. Did I do it over 1 second or 2 seconds? I did not document it. We're going to call it 1 second. It's going to just be what it's going to be. I'm going to go back 1 second, and I'm going to set this to 1. Oops, not 0.1. 1. There we go. So from in 1 second's time, it's going to go from visible to invisible at oh, whoa! Holy cow. Move key. Move key. I just realized this is 5129, and it wasn't 5129. It was 529. 529. Frame 529. We're going to go back to our card 3D. We're going to have to go all the way to the keyframe. Remove this keyframe. And go back to... Wait a minute. That's weird. Why is that? That's weird. It didn't reflect our proper frame. Anyway, at 529, which puts us there, we should set the Z to -30. Okay? For our card 3D. So we are at the right space. We were taking way too long. Way too long originally. Oh, I'm sorry. I put the wrong number in there and we keyed on the wrong frame. Alright, so we want to go back to our merge, set our merge for 7 to 0. Go back 1 second. Set this to 1. There we go. That's looking more like it. So over 1 second's time, it fades out. Alright, I think that's what I did. I don't know. You can adjust it in time if you want to make it happen over a longer period of time. I'm just surprised I didn't. Oh, I did put it in. It wasn't 1 second. Oh well. Alright. Oh, what happened to our mix? Why do I not see my... Why am I not seeing it? What's going on? There it is. 505. Oh, no. That's right. 505. 505. I just want to make sure we have the right frame. Yes, 505. That's what I did. 1 second. I was correct. For the linear, for the curves, we want to go over here. Oh, yes. We're going to just go zoom in on this. Oh, this is the light. Here, we're going to, it's just like the other one. I'm zooming, holding control and zooming in to zoom it left and right. I'm going to put this to linear, by right-clicking, interpolation, linear for this point. And then I'm going to take this, and I'm going to say interpolation. I'm going to set this one to horizontal, so it fades in a similar way. It's going to fade gradually, prospectively linear as it fades. All right, because that's not being done by the gradient, or the horizontal ramp. All right. The other thing we need to do is go back to our card 3D, edit its curves, which should mainly be the Z. Now the Z, at this point, if we fit this, is a straight linear curve. Now, the problem I have with this is I found that it didn't spend enough time in front of the screen. So I'm going to grab this handle here, and I'm just going to pull it up about halfway up this box. See this box? This is just an opinion. What that will mean is at the beginning, it's going to hang just a little bit longer on the screen, and then it's going to start pulling away a little more rapidly. It's almost like a size, because I'm sure when they did this, there's a distinct possibility when they were doing this, they were trying to mimic perspective, but they were doing it probably manually in some fashion with a light box at an angle, or I don't know exactly how they did it, but they were manually animating it. So, and they were trying to get it, and it came out okay, but when I actually looked at it, it wasn't a perfect perspective pull. Neither was it an actual horizontal scale, because they were moving it in perspective. They just weren't moving it properly. They had more of this kind of curve as opposed to a perfect, true thing, which got them a nice look. And again, it's all about your look. All right? So that gives us a better look for that. All right, next thing. Where are we? We are at... Where at? We got the thing. We got that. We got to do our scroll text. This is the last thing. We're almost there. We're almost there. All right. We need to... at this point, that's faded out. I want to make sure this is faded out. Right, when... Oh, it doesn't fade out. Right, we want to fade this in. All right, so where are we going to fade this in? We're going to start fading in our text at frame 433. And if you're wondering where I got these timings, I actually watched the intro trailer and looked at the timing and just got my rough guesstimates of about where these frame numbers were in time based off of observation. So I picked this and I just looked at this in time, and I said, oh, they went 5 seconds or 19 seconds or 10 seconds or however many seconds. I did the that's how I got the frames. And so we need to go to our text, and now we got to set up our text. We got to set our scroll Y to our first value. All right, at frame 433, we're going to set this to a value of 4020. Bam. Is that right? Yep. It says it should be 4020. Oh, we're not looking at our actual thing. 4020, which... 4020 is just so we're all aware. 4020 is just off screen down here. Okay? So that's where it's going to start. We're going to put a keyframe on scroll Y here. Okay? Now, for our final frame, we're going to set it to, we're going to go up to frame, I believe it is 2160. So we're going to go to the very last frame in our animation, and we're going to set this to negative minus 2000 for the scroll Y. Bam. Which move it to just past the end of our frame. And we can actually, we could go back here, and if we looked at this at Card 3D, you would have seen that it actually, it would have moved it from the bottom all the way up to the top very slowly over time. And we can see, here we go, we can see it moves it over time the entire length. It starts from here and goes all the way up, and then goes off the end at 2160 at the timing. This was to get the original text that they used in Star Wars to go that particular distance in time. All right, so that's where we set our key. All right, but that's obviously, once we've manipulated this and got this all in, that isn't necessarily where we are going to be ending it, because our animation actually disappears much sooner than that. We're going to zoom in here, and we're going to actually set our animation to the actual point where our text ends. So our text disappears right around 1742. So we could set our last frame. We can go back to our project. First things we want to do is click on this. Well, actually, no. I want to get it from the thing. we're gonna just say set this to 7. We'll just say 1755, or just to round get a nice number. All right, and so that's our entire project ring. That is everything, and we are good to go. If we actually rendered this all out at this point in time, we would start off with this wonderful logo, and it would go along and go on. Compos would come in, and then we would have this scrolling text start right just before it disappears, which is what the real logo does, and it goes up, and it fades off at the end, just like that. And I'm going to tell you one other tip. This is the last tip. This is the last thing on this before we end this video, which is if we go back to the text 3D, we want to go to its curves. If we look at the scroll Y, which is the scroll thing, and we fit it, hit F to fit it, you'll notice this ends at the end here. And what happens if your text happens, if you're doing a scroll like this, and your text happens to be, you've got your pacing set in for how long you want a specific thing, and then your client changes the text so it's going to be longer, or you want it shorter, or you're doing a Star Wars parody and you want to make it longer than this. Your text happens to be, 6 minutes of text, which would be ill-advised. But here's how we can do that. We want to continue this beyond that. If we drag over this, select that curve, right-click, and go to interpolation and set this to capital ROM interpolation, it will continue it in the exact direction we had been for, it's not for quite literally ever. It's curving when we move off, or when we do some, it was curving there weirdly, which was funky, but it basically will keep it going on forever. So we could have made this animation go on as long as we ever needed it to be. Remember, just because your keyframe exists beyond the end of your actual animation, it does not mean that it isn't a functional thing. It still holds it. If we wanted to set the key, if this was where we made our animation and this is where we wanted to have our last frame, it was up at the end here. Let's go to our last frame here. If I wanted to set a key here, I could easily do it for scroll Y by going down here and setting a keyframe here. There's nothing stopping me from doing that. And let's fit that again. Yeah. And you can see I added a keyframe here. And I could eliminate that other keyframe, and now my animation's in the same thing. But that means that if I do go beyond the end of my animation for something longer, I'm stuck unless I turn on capital ROM. So interpolation, capital ROM, bam, I've recovered it. I could go as long as I ever wanted to go. All right, so that's it. That's everything. We're good. All we'd have to do at this point is tie a thing. The other thing I would recommend, just because we didn't do it, for anything that is still, for example, anything that is not physically moving itself, like we built this, the text for the logo. We built the initial text, and we also built the star scene. All those things are stationary. They never move, at least not in this animation. So why are we rebuilding it on every single frame of the animation? It makes no sense. We can't do that with our text because our text literally changes from one frame to the next. It's literally the text node is physically animating. But up until this point right here, nothing changes before it. We only change it at the card 3D. The card 3D is doing all our animation. So it makes sense to use a disk cache and the frame hold at a very first frame to lock that in. That will make this will, if you don't do this, this animation would have taken probably in the neighborhood of probably several days to render out, because it would have been ridiculous. But by putting this in, I was able to render this entire animation. I put frame hold or disk cache on every one of these. I put one on the text. Here, I'll show you the original actually, just because we're at the end of it. And I don't want to leave without. Boop. Here's my original one. You can see I put a disk cache here. This was another way of doing it a different way. Disk cache here. All right. These disk caches, all those do is the exact same thing, the one that we did put in does, but for those other elements. And the reason I did it is, again, it speeds up those animations. And the other thing it means you can do is on this card 3D, we could, and I did in this one, I rendered it out with a motion blur to get, because when the actual thing is flying, I was like, hey, why not? I can do it. It's not going to affect any render time, or it will add just, all it's adding to the render time is a little bit of time for the motion blur, because it's pulling it off of that disk cache. And so, anyway, it's the same as basically rendering that out to a frame. That's the end of that, and I apologize for this being a ridiculously long thing. We're back on. I just want to say, have a great day, keep on Natron, and see you on Saturday.